Hello, sports fans, and welcome to another edition of Yesterday's Sports on the Sports History Network. Today's guest is Scott Perry, who has written a book titled NFL Since 1970. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Hey, Mark, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be on Yesterday's Sports. It's a big deal. You have a great program, and I love your sports mind. It's a lot like mine. So you have a lot in common.
All right, well, we're glad to have you. So, Scott, tell us about your book and what inspired you to write it.
Wow. Okay. My book tracks every NFL game from 1970 to today. And it's a long process of how I went from having no interest in football to being a fanatic fan. Um, but basically, in a nutshell, it's a visual guide of every standing using the helmets that were worn, and below that is a playoff grid. And
Uh-huh.
then for the standings, it tells you which team was NFL champions. And in
Right?
the latter years, I tell you how many times they've been champions since 1920, not since 1970.
Okay.
That's that's part of it. The other part of it, so when you open it up, on the left is the standings, on the right is the compilation, and I divide the league in half from 70 to whatever year you're looking at. I make a winning side and a losing side, and you look at where your team is and their winning percentage, and that's how they rank against everybody else.
Right.
And then I stick those 28 or 32 helmets on the far right side, and then you can flip through it, and then you track how your team has done in every season since the merger and ranking by winning percent.
Right. And that includes regular season, playoffs, championship games, Super Bowls.
Well, you're right. The playoff grid below the standings shows you who the playoff teams were, but
Right.
all about level playing field in my mind. That's why it's part of why it starts in 1970 because teams didn't play each other prior to that. And I don't count playoff games. I just use regular season games as a
Okay.
date on how teams rank.
Okay. Now there's no preseason games, right? Just regular season.
No pre or postseason, just the regular season game.
Okay. That sounds interesting. I used to do something along those lines. As I told you, I think in our discussion years ago, I used to do a lot of that kind of stuff, keeping track of every season. And then as the years went by, I just kind of lost interest or lost track of it. So it sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, and you were talking about one of the thing. I think one of the things that you said really got you interested in the Broncos was 1985 when they had an was it 1985 I think they had an 11-5 record and they did not get into the playoffs. And the
Yes. Yes, that's jumping ahead a little bit. It was in 1978 that I discovered Inside the NFL, and if it wasn't for Ed and Steve Sable, probably would have still have no interest in it because I didn't wasn't a football fan, but it was the heart pounding orchestral music, the slow motion video that made me a fan, and it was a process of picking either the Buffalo Bills, since I was living in Rochester, New York, or the Denver Broncos. So my parents had split up, and we moved to Rochester recent, not too many months prior to that. So I had to decide, am I going to be a Bills or Broncos fan? Now it was a process, but meantime, my dad had moved to Boston, and it was while visiting him that I was at Fenway watching Nolan Ryan pitch for the Angels. I'm a baseball fan to some extent, but nowhere near the same as football. And as we were walking out of the stadium, I give talks to seniors on sports history, and I embellish this a bit, but we're walking out, we're going around the corner, and behind the Green Monster was an apparel place. And my dad said, Scott, pick out a hat. And I turned the corner, and there was a divine light on the top row of a wall of hats. And on the top row has a light shine heaven. It's a Denver Bronco trucker hat. And that is really the deciding factor of why I picked the Denver Broncos. So now it was one of those trips that he said that he was moving back to Denver and he wanted me to move back with him. So when I finally made that decision about a year later, I got to Denver and started junior high, eighth grade, and then I graduated in 1985. And that's the year was the last straw. My fifth year being there, and the total playoff win count for my Broncos was 0. And when the 85 season ended, I was beside myself. The Broncos had tied. Check that. The Broncos and the Raiders had went to 2 overtime games, and the Raiders won them both. Denver ended up
Uh,
Denver ended up with 11 wins, the Raiders 12, and the Broncos stayed home because the Patriots took the last playoff spot with an 11-5 record and a 6-2 AFC record. Denver didn't make the playoffs, which is okay, but the last straw was when Cleveland was in the playoffs with an 8-8 record, and they went to Miami, or Miami went to them, and they got to play well. Denver sat home with 11 wins. So I manually sat down and added up every game from kickoff 1970 until 85. That was only 50 seasons to do that. If I did it today, I'd be doing 50, 60. It's hard to imagine, Mark, the difference in that, but it's been a
oh,
great.
yeah. And do you still have the hat?
I do not. I really want to. I'm going to get online some point and find a Bronco trucker hat. It said AFC champions had the D. I'm a huge fan of the old logo, and I encourage Bronco
Yes.
fans to just buy the old logo. This is a 1965 See That Water jersey.
Right.
I'm all about the old school look.
Me too. Yeah. The 1970s had the best uniforms.
Yeah, I agree.
No question about it. Now, so the Browns got in with an 8-8 record, and this is why I was never in favor of having divisions in football. And yeah, you probably know from studying your history. Prior to 1967, the NFL did not have divisions. They just had an Eastern Conference and a Western Conference.
Right, right.
Then in 1967, they started, I guess, because of expansion. There was more teams coming into the league, so they decided to break it into divisions. And you want to talk about something that was extremely unfair. The 1967 Colts had 11 wins, 1 loss, and 2 ties, and they did not qualify for the playoffs.
Yeah, that might be the biggest travesty in all of professional sports. I do remember seeing that and being upset about it, but luckily
Yeah,
I'm 1970 forward. But that's the beauty of my book. You open up and you flip through the years and you see things like, um, and I've got a copy here, and I want to go to the year that the Seahawks won the division at 7-9, and I think it was the Bears that won 10 games that year. Can't remember what year that was. You remember, Mark?
I don't remember because that's probably more recent.
But so, but the idea of winning 11 games and staying home while an 8-8 team goes, that happened to the Patriots too. The Chargers won our division at 8-8, went to the playoffs. The Patriots had 11 wins and they did not make the playoffs. I think that was the year Brady got hurt and Castle took over.
Okay. Yeah, it's happened more times than you would think. And It's just to me, I don't see the sense of having divisions because this kind of thing happens all the time where teams that have no business qualifying for the playoffs or getting in, and teams, like you say, 11
Well,
and 5, and then they don't get in.
there's a compromise there. I think having divisions is okay, but if that you're talking about seeding it where a team with more wins will get to jump over a division winner.
Right. If they did it that way, then okay, fine. Then you could keep the divisions, but
Uh,
that's the way it is. So now let me backtrack for just a minute, because I believe you said you were born and raised in Long Island. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. So I have a pretty long presentation. I put on a football tie and I become Professor Perry, and it's really good to become a football professor and being from the Long Island area. But I want to go back a little bit even further and how the correlations are really amazing in my like family history and pro football. But if we're going to get in depth pro football history. I want to go back to 1898 when the Cardinals show up in Chicago. I think they're at Menlo Park. You know about that, Mark?
I don't think. I think 1920 is probably really the furthest I've gone back.
Okay, well, yeah, the Cardinal organization started in 1898 and they're the longest continuous franchise, but they became an NFL team in 20. You're right about that.
Right.
But anyway, I bring that up because of future discussion of Bronco history. But then I want to go to 1905 was when my mom's dad is born in Rochester, New York. So 15 years later, when he's 15, I never, he passed away when I was 20, but I never discussed what it was like being in Rochester as a 15-year-old and having the Rochester Jefferson play for a few seasons. I really wish I would have gotten a take on that. I know he had a piece of the Hindenburg in his basement. I don't remember seeing it, but I remember that was the case. I wish I could have heard about any Jefferson connection they have had. That was one of the original NFL franchises.
Right.
It goes back to the disorganization of the league where they they played only 27 games in the 3 or 4 years that they played football.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of those teams from the 1920s, they didn't survive. There wasn't there wasn't the popularity for the sport, and the money was very scarce. So a lot of those teams just folded.
Yeah.
A lot of
So, as a historian, it's a lot of different aspects. It's funny that there's several Major League Baseball teams that have been around since prior to 1900, but there's only been one AAA team, and that's the Rochester Red Wings. They started in 1899. So Rochester's
wow.
I like to talk about Rochester being a good sports town. They're also the 1951 NBA champions too. So it's an interesting history for that place.
Wow. And growing up in Long Island, you became a Mets fan, right?
Well, yeah, so all that to say that I was very happy when I give my talks to talk about a really important character in the AFL. So if I was born, I tell people that I was born the year of the first Super Bowl. I was born several months, April after the January '67 Super Bowl. But being born in the AFL area of the Jets and having Joe Namath drafted 2 years earlier by those same Cardinals, I tell people that as I'm talking Bronco history to Bronco maniacs here in Denver, I say if it wasn't for Joe Namath giving the league some respectability, you know, 9 years after the AFL started, they're finally going to play an NFL team and have a victory after Joe Namath guarantees it. I give my talk talking about the right horse and the wrong horse to me is the Colts. So Joe Namath beat the Colts, and I give a rundown on how bad the Denver Broncos were in the '60s. So I talk about the potential. I think that the owner of the Browns, Modell, was really maybe anti-Denver Bronco and letting him be one of the 10 teams that joined the NFL. And if that's the case, I think it's a numbers game where they needed to be even number of teams. But I think that when Joe Namath won the championship in the AFL, that gave the Broncos some credibility. Really was a boost for them. So growing up on Long Island, having Jack pajamas and pictures, family pictures means a lot. I do root for the Jets. They're the most harmless team to be a fan of, along with your real football. So,
Yeah.
but I moved back and forth a couple times from Denver to Long Island, and it was in 1977 that I discovered the Mets. And Dave Kingman and Lee Mazzilli were my favorite players, and I've been a pseudo Mets fan ever since. I don't follow the sport very closely, but I love to be a Mets fan.
All right. Well, my wife grew up in Long Island, so her family is mostly Mets fans.
Good.
So, uh, yeah, Dave Kingman. I remember Dave Kingman playing for the Mets. I think Dave Kingman played for just about every team in the league. It seemed like.
Yeah, I buy that.
So
He
then
was
you're from Long Island. You moved to Colorado,
yeah.
and
We
it
moved.
was.
Yeah, we moved to Denver and
Uh
and
oh.
se-
Okay. I think I can hear you now.
can you got me?
I got you.
Okay. All right. My screen says uploading track. I'm not sure what that means, but anyway, we talked about let's start. So Mark, I moved to Denver in 1975, and I was not a fan at age 8, but I have my first sports memory. But let me check that. My first sports memory is waiting at the end of the driveway in Center Ridge, New York, for my dad to pull up in the Volkswagen Bug and hand me his Sunoco pro football stamps for my book that I was putting stamps in back in 1972, the year I started kindergarten. I,
Wow.
I didn't have much interest in it, but that was my first sports memory. So fast forward to 75, and we're living in Denver, and it's the last season. Floyd Little. I just talked to a fan. He said, "Boy, that's the last. That's as long as his legs would let him play. If he played 2 more years, he would have been in the Super Bowl with the Broncos, and maybe they would have beat the Cowboys that year, but he wasn't there." But anyway, my dad had tickets to Floyd's last game against the Eagles. He scores 2 touchdowns. They carry him off on their shoulders. It's a big deal. So I remember that as a big part of Bronco history, and it is a big part of pro football history in general because if we look at NFL history, it is the draft that really instigated uh, the need to merge because in
Yep.
'67, the Broncos had the sixth pick and they took Syracuse running back Floyd Little. And he said, "I'll be an AFL player," and that's really a big deal. The Broncos also drafted Roland Olson, Bob Hayes, and Dick Butkus. But of course, that's history of the wrong kind of them not being AFL players.
Right. And then you started watching. What year did you say you started watching NFL films?
Yeah. So that was 75. We were there through 76. Still wasn't a fan. Then we moved back to Long Island. But let me do a little quick blurb of just history in general. Uh, I love to talk the correlation of the fact that we turned 250 as a country this year.
Right.
And you know what the nickname is of our state here in Colorado, Mark?
What's that?
It's the Centennial State.
Oh yeah.
So that
How
next
about
year
that?
in 1976, we were celebrating Colorado's 100th birthday that summer and America's 200th birthday. That's why we're the Centennial. Well, I
All
bring
right.
that up. Go ahead.
Something just happened here. Can you still hear me?
I can.
Okay, something happened on my computer. Let me just check something real quick here. I want to make sure these settings are correct. I don't want us to get disconnected. Okay, here we go. Okay, I think we're all set now.
Are you ready?
Yep.
So the connection of NFL starting in 1920, then 50 years later, just the timing's perfect. They decide after 4 years of being merged, but now to join the two leagues together and become the NFL and no longer the AFL under the NFL Shield. So when they celebrated 50 seasons, the Broncos celebrated their first. So in 2019 was the 100th anniversary of the NFL, 100 seasons. That was Denver's 50th anniversary of the NFL city. So I just love the correlation of America turning 250 and US and Colorado turning 150 today. And I say all that because it's a big deal. Today is Colorado Day, August 1st. We turn 150 years old today. So,
Wow.
you historians that you haven't been to Colorado,
How,
you got to see it.
how about that? 150 today.
Yeah.
That's terrific. So getting back to the NFL films, um, I that did have a lot to do. I mean, I was already a football fan by that point, but that just made me more of a football fan. Watching all those weekly shows they had This Is the NFL. They had This Week in Pro Football. They had the NFL Game of the Week,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the narrators were just they were all top notch. I mean, I think it started with Jack Whitaker, and then later they had Pat Summerall, Tom Brookshire, Harry Callis, and of course the voice behind all those films, the legendary John Facenda.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
It's amazing stuff how that video just captivates you and pulls you in with that music and the
oh yeah.
narration. Yeah, I think Steve Sable wrote a bunch of the material that Harry Callis would narrate with, and it was just amazing. Had a great effect. It's and so he gets a lot of credit.
Well, we definitely have to give Ed and Steve Sable a lot of credit for making the NFL what it is today.
It's true. It's true. So, yeah. Another thing was when I moved here for the third time, but the first time as a Bronco fan at age 14, I got a ticket to the first preseason game of that '81 season, and ironically, it was the New York Jets that were playing.
Uh-huh.
And this experience is almost on par with the Stables, but a little lower actually. But I walk into Mile High Stadium, I'm just completely caught off guard by the fact that I'm separated from the Jets practicing in their sideline by a chain link fence. And I remember number 66, uh, Rasmussen, hit first
Right.
Randy, and boy, Kearney State player. I would played for a long time, but I remember seeing him, and that just kind of struck me. And but I walked around the horseshoe, which is the warning track in baseball, and then when I made the curve, all of a sudden there's a wall of orange Bronco jerseys, and that's my big idol at that point. And that just made me an even bigger fan by being separated from the playing field by a chain link fence, never to happen again in NFL history. Will they let anybody get that close unless you're having 50-yard line seats? You know what I'm saying, Mark?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was a different time back then, a
Yeah.
different era. It was wonderful.
There,
The way. Yeah, go ahead.
so it was 2 years earlier in an episode of Mork and Mindy where if anybody's a fan of that TV show, Robin Williams, iconic comedian, but he put on a Bronco cheerleader outfit and he appeared in an episode as a Bronco cheerleader. If you want to look it up, you see footage of the spot that I'm talking about right on the field there by the chain link fence where you're in the field. It's great stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I do remember that. Now later, now we were talking about NFL films, and then I don't remember exactly what year this show started, but when they started with HBO, they had a show called Inside the NFL with Nick Bonacani and Len Dawson, right?
Yeah, that was the show. I had not watched anything prior to that or really anything regularly after that. It was Nick and Len that really captivated me. They did a great job. That HBO show was just top notch, and I think that
Yes.
I think the Inside the NFL show is still available somewhere. And this season, I'm going to resolve to find a way to watch it. I don't know if I have to pay for it or what, but I'm going to find it.
No, you
But
could find all.
you think?
Oh yeah, you could find all that stuff on YouTube.
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate the music is not is not anywhere near as inspiring for a young fan that Sam Spence music was back then.
That's right. Yes. If you go to YouTube and you type in, I think you just type in this week in the NFL, or now you could definitely find those 19, whatever you type in, 1970s football films. You can find all that stuff on YouTube.
Well, a great example is typing in "The Mighty Wind is a Pirate," and as a Bronco fan,
Right.
our arch nemesis will always be the Raiders, no matter how bad that organization is. They'll always be the top of our hatred list. But that song really, that song is amazing to hear that "The Mighty Wind is a Pirate." It's really, really compelling.
Yes. And that one has John Facenda doing the narration.
Yes, it does. Top notch.
Oh, he was legendary, John
Yeah.
Facenda.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can imagine that frustration. So we'll talk a little bit of Bronco history here. So that 81 season, well, at that game, I look back. So my book doesn't have any players mentioned because to me, they're all cogs in the wheel of getting my Broncos. If you see the book, you'll understand my ranking higher to get the Broncos to have the single, but about championships. I'm not going to begrudge anybody who says it's all about scoreboard of championships. I want the Broncos to have the best winning percentage from kickoff 70 to some point in the future. And I'm sure if you look at it, you want your team to be there too. But back to that game and that preseason against the Jets, it turns out that that game was the first ever time that Dan Reeves was on the sideline. Now, I am not a Cowboys fan, but I know that I'm a big Tom Landry fan. And I know that he coached Dan Reeves and then added him to his staff. And when Dan
Yep.
Reeves came to Denver, he took a good organization and made them really good in my mind. That's the mindset of the Broncos as a result of that. So that's the part of the history of why I love the Broncos.
Do you have a copy of the book there?
I do.
You could hold it up to the camera. There it is. NFL since 1970.
It's not a real good example, but you see that row of helmets there, and
Yep.
your team's in there somewhere, and the goal is to get them when a good quarterback, a good ownership, and a good head coach show up. That helmet's going to rise, and when one of them disappears, they drop like a rock. So there's some wonderful examples in there I can talk about, but we'll maybe get to that.
Well, I know my team, the Cowboys, was up there ranked number one for many years. But now, of course,
so they only actually, of the 57 seasons, they have, I think, 4 where they are the winningest team in winning percentage. But
for 4 years, yeah.
For 4 years, but they never drop out of the top 5. Them and another team never lose their top 5 ranking all 56 years. Can you guess what team the other one is, Mark?
I would say Oakland has to be up there. The Raiders, Miami has to be up there. Let's see, Miami, the Raiders, the Cowboys, probably, I don't know if the 49ers, they weren't good in the 70s, so I'm not sure if they'd be up there. Maybe the Vikings, the Rams. Who did I miss?
No, that's good. Well, let's talk about the one team you mentioned first and how great that is that you're wrong in that. But the second team you mentioned is correct. So in 1970, when the book starts, that's the first year of Don Shula as the coach of the Dolphins. And he retires in 1995. But again, you'll have to get the book to see this in person. But the, the Dolphin helmet, of course, is number one after the undefeated season, and maybe for 2 seasons after that. Then the Cowboys and Raiders. But the Cowboys are replaced by the Dolphins in 1984 when Dan Marino travels to Palo Alto to play Joe Montana in the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, Dan's only Super Bowl he loses, but he puts the Dolphins back into the number one spot.
Yep.
That's 84. Don retires in 95. And it's pretty amazing to think that the Dolphins' inertia of being a mediocre team kept them in the number one spot until the 2010 season. Isn't that incredible?
Wow. That is incredible.
So
that is.
And then it gets better, and I can't make this up, Mark. It's the God's honest truth. The 2009 season ended. Pittsburgh went to Miami and beat them, and the result was, let me just go to that. It's too hard to believe. So from kickoff 1970 until the end of the 2009 season, Miami and Pittsburgh both had 372 wins, 242 losses, and 2 ties.
Wow. I don't know how I forgot the Steelers. I knew I forgot somebody.
Yeah. So that's an incredible fact. Now, I had to go 4 decimal places to determine that Miami kept that number one spot for that last year of that run. And the difference is, you're a crazy sports fan, maybe to know that in the NFL, high gains didn't count as a calculation in 70 and 71,
Right.
like prior to the merger. But in 72, you got credited for half of a win. So all of the Dolphin games totals was 1 less because they opened up the 1971 season in Denver, and it's a big part of Bronco history. Lou Saban went down and kicked a field goal to tie the game and get a tie. The fans, this is an 11-year-old franchise at that point, never had a winning season. They're really upset that he did not go for the win. So it's the half a loaf game. After the game, Lou Saban said, "Hey, half a loaf is better than nothing at all." So
right.
next week, people threw loads of bread on the field, and it's a big bone of contention for Bronco fans. But that had that factor, and ever since then, the Steelers have been running away with the title in my book of the winningest team in all the regular season games.
Right. All the way up until 1972, they were the laughing stock of the NFL. the Steelers.
You know what? You're right. When I talk about them, I talk about from 19
It's
I say from 1933 to 1969, they might have been
right.
one of the teams in all the pro sports.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
Chuck, Chuck Noll has to get a lot of credit for that.
Chuck Noll
Chuck,
started in 69. They drafted me, Joe Green in 69, and
yep,
it's just unfortunate luck for us non-Steeler fans that they still only won one game in Chuck's first year, and they actually um, they actually beat Chicago in Chicago for their only win. And uh, in my mind, today, and this isn't. Uh, it's a very big part of my book and football history is the fact that they made the Bears and the Steelers do a coin flip when I think the Bears would have outright earned it today based on the head-to-head. But the Steelers won the coin flip, and they got Terry Bradshaw, and within 10 years, they had 4 trophies in the lobby. And
yep,
the 106-year-old Bears, Mark, are still looking for their first franchise quarterback.
yep. That's true. They haven't really had a franchise quarterback since Sid Luckman.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if someone wants to argue that, I'll buy that. But to me, a franchise quarterback is consecutive winning 8 or 9 years and at least one title.
Right. And the Steelers also had a scout by the name of Bill Nunn, who deserves a lot of credit for that.
Is that right?
He's the one that went out and scouted all these guys that this Steelers drafted. He was very much like Gil Brandt for the Cowboys. Big Gil Brandt and Bill Nunn for the Steelers. They call them the Super Scouts.
Well,
And
yeah, it's a big deal. Since 70, they're the team. And to give Bill some credit, I appreciate you doing that, Mark.
yeah, and it's no coincidence that the Steelers and the Cowboys dominated the 1970s, and they had those two scouts, Gil Brandt and Bill Nunn.
Yes, yes. So those and even today, those are the top 2 teams in my book, and it's frustrating, but you know, at that, I'll tell you that when I became a fan watching Inside the NFL, I of course loved the Broncos, but I decided to love all the bad teams and really dislike the dominant teams, and that's why I'm still not a Cowboys, Steelers, Raiders, not a big
Uh,
Redskin fan or Commanders fan. But I do
right,
really enjoy the rest of the teams that are bad.
right. I don't think I remember. I'm glad you reminded me of that because I think I forgot about that. The coin toss. I know the Bears were 1-13, and the Steelers were 1-13 in 1969. I didn't remember that it came down to a coin toss.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
very interesting.
Well, it gets more interesting, and I've researched this, and I've actually called the number 2 pick of that draft tonight. So I love the idea of talking about the first 10 draft picks in the NFL after the merger in 1970. And
Right.
Mike McCoy was drafted by the Packers because the Bears traded the second overall pick to a team in their division. And I
Yeah.
find it really I did give him a call, and he's a neat guy. He's a fellow believer, and he gives talks to schools to encourage kids in their faith. Isn't that awesome, Mark?
That's Mike McCoy for the Packers?
Well, he was a Packer for a while, then he went to another team, but
Right. That's
but they
terrific.
here, I mean, I can't make this up. He was a Raider in that January 77 no, the January 1st, 1978 game against the Broncos. Uh, I have a little poster here. I don't know if you can see it.
Uh,
Broncos Raiders poster. But Mike McCoy was a player for the Raiders in that game where the Broncos won and went to their first Super Bowl. So I really enjoyed talking to him and how he's a big part of NFL and Bronco history for me.
And he goes to schools, you say?
Yeah, he's I forget. It's been couple of years since I talked to him, but he goes out to
Right.
schools and gives presentations.
Oh, that's great. Terrific.
Yeah.
Now, at what year was it that they did? I guess they didn't have this years ago. You were selected as fan of the week.
Right. So that gets back to the origins of the book. So I thought of the idea, and then I manually, in January of '86, after the Broncos won those 11 games and stayed home. So I sat down and I compiled every game played, and I looked at the fact that at that point in time, well, it was all about the fact that I knew that if I went to Mile High Stadium, I felt like I had a 75% chance of watching the Broncos win. I'm frustrated with the team that won't win a playoff game for me, but I know they're a great regular season team. And when I compiled the wins and losses since the merger, I don't know if I made the two columns back then, but if I did, I would have seen that the Broncos were not on the losing column and they were halfway up the winning column, which told me that 75% of the NFL teams had a lesser winning percentage in the regular season in those 15 years that the Broncos were in the NFL for the first time. So that's a big deal. So that
Right.
eventually that evolved into the idea for the book, but the book was in the back of my mind, and I had to have it look like it does, and I couldn't do that until 2009. You believe that? That's a very long wait. But that's some
Oh
good
yeah.
perseverance. I give myself credit for persevering. But finally, a guy at my church said, "Scott, here's your book." And every helmet was a Cardinal helmet. And I had to manipulate every helmet into place. Now,
Wow.
in the standings, if a team changes their face mask, I change it the next season, let alone the
Uh,
helmet. But
wow.
the reason, Mark, is the main reason I wanted to use helmets because when I became a fan, I became a purist fan right away. And I was upset when cities lost their teams. And I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
not going to go for that. I am not going to change cities or nicknames. I have a vision for a book, and I want to just use the helmets to represent the team every season. So
Right.
uh, that's how that idea came to be. And it's just a neat, kind of like a comic book where you kind of get to flip the page and you watch your team, and it's neat. So I got that done, and then I went to show tailgaters at Mile High Stadium, well in Vesco back then, and there's the character at Mile High Stadium who's a leprechaun. He's a former Bronco fan of the week. So, like with most people, I show the book and they finally get the idea of what I did and they understand. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, that's incredible. You should go talk to so and so. He's the producer of the Fan of the Week segment." And in 2013, uh, that was Peyton Manning's second year, or was it his first year? But anyway, it was a Thursday night uh, game against the Chargers that I was filmed out the tailgaters as Bronco Fan of the Week. And that was a pretty awesome honor to have that.
Wow. That's terrific.
But I'll tell you what, Mark, there's another honor I had that's a much bigger deal, and that's getting a voicemail from Jim Sacamano. Now, Jim Sacamano was for 35 years the PR guy of the Broncos. He and I both went to Metro State University in downtown Denver, but he was such a good PR guy that I think the NFL hired him to do some Super Bowls over the years. But
Right.
when I gave a copy to him first, and then I went back and gave a copy and said, "Please give this to Pat Bowman for me." And I thought, well, that's great. He's got a copy. But it was a couple months later that I got a phone call, and it's Jim talking about, I still have the recording. Jim saying, "Boy, Pat wanted me to call you, Scott, tell you what. a tremendous fan he thought you were, and compiling all of that, he said, "Boy, what a true labor of love, and it's just tremendous." He said, and he wished me the best of luck with the project. It was just really made me swell with pride because if it wasn't for Pat Bowlen, I would not have had that ability to feel like I could get my Broncos to be the Yankees of pro football. So, so that's better than being on television, Mark.
Yeah, that's
But let's go back to that. So that was the 81 season that I went to the preseason game, and then I went to my first regular season game and saw the Seahawks. And I love the fact that in 1981, Coach Dan Reed had his fellow 1965 rookie Dallas Cowboy quarterback Craig Morton as his quarterback, and
right.
they had a tremendous 1981 season. But unfortunately, Dan Fouts had a little bit better. So the Broncos won 10 games in 81, and so did the Chargers. And it's ironic, I moved from upstate New York
Right.
become become a Denverite again for the third time, but the first time as a Bronco fan. But during the 81 season, the Broncos went to Buffalo and they lost 9-7. So when the season ended, both Denver and Buffalo had 10 wins. And of course, Denver stayed home and Buffalo went to Shea Stadium, beat, beat the Jets, then went on to lose to the Bengals, who went on to beat the Chargers in the 27 degree below zero AFC Championship game that year.
Yep.
So well, the Dan Reeves rookie season was 10 wins, no playoff. Now, I mentioned I want the Broncos to be the Yankees. So in the fall of 82, John Elway's playing for the Yankee organization in Oneida, New York. And this is a big part of, and that's a big part of Bronco history. So in 1982, there's a strike. You know that, right, Mark?
Yep. I remember the strike, that's for sure.
57 days of no football. And the blowtorch here in Denver, KOA 850 AM, they would broadcast Bronco games during that time, but it was just the announcers reading a script of a game that was not really being played. That's how crazy Bronco town is. So that the people would tune in to watch a Bronco game, but it was you could hear it, but it wasn't really being played. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy. I never
So
heard of that.
yeah. So in 1982, we talk about the wrong horse. That's the Colts. And in 1982 was a special year for the Packers. They had a winning season, which was very rare. The team of the 60s was a pretty bad team up until that point. So the highlight of the season for the Colts was they tied the Packers. The season ended after 9 games, and the Packers had no wins, 8 losses, and a tie. So when you go winless, what is your reward, Mark?
You get the #1 draft pick.
You get the #1 pick, and to the
Yeah.
chagrin of Jack Elway was not very happy. So he gave a phone call and said, "Do not draft my son. He's not going to play for your organization. He's playing
Right.
for the he's going to play for the Yankees to be a pitcher if you guys draft him." Well, April of '83 rolls around, and, and the Colts still took John Elway, but he was
Yep.
out. So this is the story of how we got 2-7 in Denver. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's
So
right.
it made for the best part in Bronco history is when the Colts owners on the phone to other teams, especially AFC West teams, and he was not happy with their negotiations. So he would say to them, "Oh, you want John Elway? I'll give you John Elway. You're going to see him twice a year. I'm sending him to Denver." Then hang up on him, and that changed the life of all Bronco fans at that point in time because John Elway became a Bronco as a result. But it goes beyond how do we get to Elway. Had the Broncos not finished 2-7, they would not have had a fourth pick in the draft to trade to get John Elway. So that is one of the many awesome number scenarios from my book that the Broncos were 2-7 and got John Elway as a result.
Wow, how about that? Unbelievable.
So
That's great, interesting stuff. Now, do you still watch? Do you still watch a lot of the NFL today, or not as much?
I watch surprisingly little. I just don't watch TV
Yeah,
in general. So I watch when I can. I catch games, but to me, it's all about hearing that gun go off. And then the game goes in my book, and I want that to help my Broncos get be the winning team of every game from seven. So that's why I keep track. And I do enjoy the game, but I don't make an effort to sit all Sunday long in front of the TV.
right. And what about other sports? Do you watch any other sports?
Now you know what? I used to be a big NASCAR guy, but it's been a decade since I got into that sport. And I enjoy occasional baseball game, and I cheer for the Avalanche and the Nuggets. I'm
Uh
a
huh.
histor I'm a historian and a franchise fan. So I was very happy when the Milwaukee Bucks won a championship. I was upset when the Pacers didn't win a championship. I was thrilled when the Nuggets won a championship. So I want every organization to get a title. So I keep track of milestones in sports. That's my thing. And I love the fact that my book is how I can track what's going on in the NFL with milestones for each individual organization.
Right. What would you say would be your favorite, like your favorite era or favorite time period when you were, an avid Broncos fan? What was your favorite time period? Was it the Elway years or?
Well, yeah. I mean, so my book exists because the Broncos from 81 to 85 did not
Right.
win a playoff game. Well, ironically, I graduated high school and I had to move back up to upstate New York. So what's the result of me leaving town? The Broncos and I have a buddy who's pretty adamant that I did this. I was leaving town and I think the Saints were here playing the Broncos, but I said, "Hey, the Saints are here, but I'm going to almost guarantee that the Broncos are going to play the Giants in the Super Bowl." And that is actually what happened the next year. That the Broncos won two playoff games and lost the Super Bowl that year. And I was gone for 2 years. And then the next year, the Broncos win two playoff games and get crushed by the Redskins. So I got my playoff wins and I got some Super Bowl appearances, but I didn't get a victory.
Right.
So when I moved back to Denver in '88, well, Denver was the only 8-8 team in 1988 and missed the playoffs. And the Bills, now I'm a Bills fan. Now I'm back in Denver and they go to the AFC Championship game, but they lose to the Bengals, who go on to lose to Joe Montana for the second time in the '80s.
Right.
But then in 1989, I'm in Denver and the Broncos win two more playoff games, but then
Oh boy.
they experience the
Hum-
worst Super Bowl in history.
Humiliating. That was over before it started.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that
So
was terrible Super Bowl.
so I mean that's the memories back to being 0-4 like the Bills and Vikings are today. But I just am very grateful that we're not 0-4. And our record is 3-5 in the Super Bowl. We were tied with the Patriots for the most losses in Super Bowl history, but the Seahawks took care of that for us and beat the Patriots last February.
All right. Now, I'm going to ask you about. This is a sports show, but you mentioned that you are a big fan of automobiles.
Yes, yes. So I would I don't have a picture here of it, but I popped out of the womb on Long Island. I was a car guy, and my dad got me a miniature version of a '66 Impala, and that somehow got tattooed on my brain. of a love of 66 Impalas. But, Mark, there's more to that. I was born in 67, and it's a big part of NFL history. But I love full-size Chevys of the 60s. But I think that Ford copied so well the Impala from 65 to 67 that
Right.
my favorite cars are 65 to 67 full-size Fords and Chevrolets. And that's just neat how it correlates with the big time in football history.
Right. I think I mentioned to you that my father was he was the auto parts manager for a Pontiac dealership.
That's great. Yep.
I want to show you this. I have to get up and go get it. I want to show you this model. Had a whole bunch of these cars at the dealership.
What?
My father. Yeah, my father, as I say, he was an auto parts manager. So on Saturday morning, he had normal hours pretty much Monday through Friday, but then he would work like Saturday mornings, just like a half a day. He'd work on Saturdays, and he would bring me and my brother with him, and they would have these model cars up there on a shelf. I used to have other ones, but this is the only one that survived. I know it's a Pontiac. I'm not sure what exactly it is, but me and my brother used to take these down off the shelf and we would play with them while my father was working. And I used to have a whole bunch of these. But me and my brother didn't really take after my father as far as knowing a lot about automobiles.
Well, I did. I went over and I got this is an actual factory promo that the dealership gave out back in '66. The '66
That's for
Impala.
nice. Yeah,
So it's pretty
very
cool.
similar. Yeah, I
Yep.
love
So
those. Yeah,
this is the car.
66 Impala.
Yep.
That's your favorite.
Yes, it is. So yeah, and uh, back to the book, Mark. It's the fact that I put the word "spins" in the book title, so it's kind of like making donuts. You got to keep it updated every year. So if
Yep.
uh, if people get on Amazon and order a copy, it's my desire that they enjoy that copy and find a young fan to give that to and order the next year's. But if they want to email me and try to convince me to send them the new season, keep their old copy, I might consider doing that for them.
Right. So you want to give that information for anyone?
Well,
They can go on Amazon and type in the title.
yep, do that, and then they can take my email down. It's easy. It's Scott at the name of the book. So Scott at NFL since 1970. And that's how to reach me, and I'd love to hear from fans. Now, when I give my talks, I talk about I was born in '67, the year of the Super Bowl, and my goal every year my book gets 3 pages thicker. I have the new season, Mark. And
Yep.
when I that, so I think that if I'm 99 years old and I'm able to skate into the stadium section at Super Bowl 100 to the 100-year-old fans, that that's going to be pretty neat. So
Yeah.
I say that to say that if somebody looks at my book and how I thought of these different pages, and they want to send me an idea for a page, I would gladly consider it. My favorite that I've been on podcasts about is the the what if Super Bowl. What if the opposite teams had won the conference championships? It makes for a
Right.
great conversation.
The one I always talk, speaking about that, the one I always look back on is 1985 when the Bears had that great season, of course, and they would have played the Dolphins, who were the only team that beat them that season. And I always look at that and say, what a great Super Bowl that probably would have been. But the Dolphins got upset in I believe it was the championship game against the Patriots.
Correct. Yes, I agree with you. That's a big deal. I mean, you don't really understand the gravity of that Monday night win over the Bears because that really the 17-0 season would be so much less relevant had the Bears gone 19-0 that year, but they didn't because of the Dolphins. That's a kick save goal in my book. So,
Yep.
but it's funny you mention that because as you know, this brings me back to some other history of my family and the Broncos. My my dad's side's from New Bedford, Massachusetts, and my mom's side from Rochester, New York. And the day that I opened up the Bronco Press Guide and found out that the first ever time the Broncos took the field was was near New Bedford in Providence, Rhode Island, where I'd have to fly in to visit my grandparents. So that
Right.
was the first time the Broncos took the field in a game against the Patriots for preseason. Then they got on an airplane and flew to Rochester, New York, and they played the Bills in that town before flying to Houston. So I just think it's amazing that two cities of my family are the two locations the Broncos played their first two games.
Right. How about that?
There's all kinds of interesting correlations for me. It's really amazing.
Right. Now, if you could tell us how your faith as a Christian, how do you feel that helped you? Was it part of inspiration, helping you to write the book?
Well, I appreciate you saying that because it's a big deal. My book
Yeah.
is not a lot of writing involved, but if
Right.
someone were to
Yeah.
get it, if someone were to get it and read the foreword, I talk about how my church helped me get it into the format it is. I had to manipulate the helmet. But I say in there, I say this is a tribute to John Elway. John Elway's ability as a quarterback, and then at the GM, he talks Peyton into becoming a Bronco.
Right.
So so that's pretty awesome. Um, but I tell people this is my passion, but my passion changed when I became a Christian, and
Right.
I, I want people to read the real book of John. If they open that up and they just learn about what it is that Jesus did for them, that's so much better than having 10 Super Bowl wins in a row. I just love that fact. So,
Absolutely.
but Mark, there's another aspect. My book is about whether you're a 500 team. If you're a
Right.
good team, you're winning side. If you're not, you're working that way from the losing side. But when I gave my life to
Right.
Jesus, I gave my life to Jesus at age 30, and next year I'll be 60. So I'll be at the 500 mark of
How
being a Christian.
about
That's a big.
that? Yeah, it sure
So
is.
I appreciate you giving me a chance to talk about that. And I never did go see Manning play, but I did go see Tebow play 3 times, and I was really happy with his play. And I meet some neat people when I'm with this book. But I met a guy. I stumbled upon a guy that has a website called the First 16, and it shows all the quarterbacks and the fact that Tim Tebow had the best statistics in his first 16 games over all the other quarterbacks. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, I don't think they really gave him enough of a chance.
No, not at all. But I mean,
You're-
so, but Mark, here's another weird aspect: is I
Oop,
was giving a talk.
I lost the sound again. I'm losing the sound. We back? You can hear me?
I got you. You hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So Tim Tebow was a big deal, and I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, we were talking about how didn't seem like they really gave him enough of a chance in the NFL.
Right, right. So so Mark, you're right. They didn't give him much of a chance. But here's a really bizarre thing that happened. I was giving a talk down in Lone Tree, Colorado, and and um, I'm going to start over, Mark.
Okay.
So we're talking about Tim Tebow, and it's a great correlation. I was giving a talk down in Lone Tree, Colorado, and after my talk, a gal walks up and says, "Hey, my son flew to Indianapolis and checked out Peyton Manning's neck and gave the Broncos a thumbs up." So, I mean, I'm like, wow, that's a big part of Bronco history that this guy was correct in analyzing his medical condition, allowing him to become a Bronco. So I bring that up because as big of a Tebow fan as I was okay with us acquiring that caliber of a quarterback to replace him. You know what I'm saying, Mark?
Right. Yep. They won. Did they win two Super Bowls or one
Well,
with Pete?
it's, yeah. So, Mark, Peyton was the wrong horse, a colt for 12 seasons. And he
Right.
won one Super Bowl and he lost one Super Bowl. Then he came to
Right.
Denver. He was the right horse for 4 seasons. And in my book, he should have been in all 4 Super Bowls those years, but he went to 2 and he won 1. So the
Right.
2013 season, they scored 606 points. Astronomical.
Wow.
50, eh, 55 touchdowns out of Peyton Manning that year, but they scored 8 points against the Seahawks. And it's tough to talk about as a Bronco fan, but it only takes 2 years to go by to get our third championship against the Panthers.
Right. Well, is before we go, is there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I just want to plug the book as something that's really fun for kids to learn the helmets and the progression
Yep.
of the franchises, and you open up to the year you were born and you see whether your team was a good organization or not. But I want people to feel like they can be asked about their franchise and have an idea of whether they were good in a certain era. And that's why this book is a really neat way to flip through and gauge the progress of their team and see whether they're on the winning side, the losing side, which is the next quadrant they're shooting for. Are they in the top quadrant but shooting for number one?
Right.
So Mark, here's something interesting. Week 1 of the NFL season, if the Bengals win and the Browns lose, the Bengals will be out of last place in my book for the first time in decades since the Texans showed up. Because
Wow.
the Browns continue to drop. When the Browns showed up again in 1999, they were the number 11 team, one game under 500. And now
Right.
they're going, and if they lose opening day and the Buccaneers win, they will be number 32 in winning
Right.
percentage. It's amazing.
But they really messed that up, in my opinion. The NFL really screwed that up with the Browns and the Ravens, because the Ravens are, the Ravens are actually the original Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
they tried to pass it off, saying that I know they made some kind of an agreement with Art Modell, and they tried to pass off the Ravens as an expansion team, which they were clearly not an expansion team because they took all the players with them from the
right.
Browns. So the Browns were when they came, when the Browns after that, I think it was a 3-year hiatus. They're the team that was the expansion team, and they were really at a terrible disadvantage because the Ravens took all their players.
I mean, because it was two completely different organizations, and
Right.
I'm gonna disagree with you that I really like the fact that they didn't make one team have two different cities statistics in it. They kept it in Cleveland, and now only when you were a running back for the Browns, your numbers stopped in Cleveland and started all over again for the Ravens. And I wish they would have done that for Tennessee and left the Oilers in Houston and the Cardinals in St. Louis. Well, they
Yeah.
had a team, but
Right.
so that's
it,
interesting that you say that. I agree with you
uh,
to some extent.
it just gets a little confusing because that's the only team that was ever done with. Now, if they had
Right,
done
right.
that with, like you say, if they had done that with the Tennessee Titans and every other team, then okay. But they only did it for that one instance, so
Right.
it gets very confusing.
Well, that's why my book is all helmets. I hate the fact that cities should not have to lose their organizations, and it's just frustrating. But
Yeah.
hey, on to better news, real quick, Mark. I wanted to cover a couple milestones in my book coming up, and
Yep.
one that makes me happy as a Buffalo Bills fan. The Bills are on the top of the losing side in my book from 70 till today. But if they can win 13 games, they will be over 500. And it'll be a rare situation if the number one team on the losing side is at 500. And that's a big deal. I love the Bills. And for them to no longer be a losing organization, I want them to win a championship, but no longer losing is a big deal. Well, what's going on the bottom of the winning side is the Las Vegas Raiders lost their last game last year, and they are now one game under 500 for the first time as an NFL team in 57 years of football. So
Wow.
we're going to see a swap of the Raiders winning to losing and the Bills losing to winning next year. And those are the
Right.
final that that's a big deal for me.
How quickly things can change, right? The two of the most dominant teams, the Raiders and the Cowboys, used to be. I mean, they used to be two of the most dominant teams, and now over the past 25 years, neither team has done anything. So it changes quick.
Well, everything growing up was the Raiders, then the Broncos. And now since 2000, that's part of my talk is that when they got John Gruden in Tampa, that's a long time ago. And the Raiders have had two winning seasons. Now the commitment to excellence is now one game under 500 as an organization. That's unheard of. They are down there with the Bucks, the Bengals, and the Cardinals for just multi decades of
Yep.
ineptitude.
Yeah. Who would have expected that, right?
Right.
If you would have said that 30 years ago, no one would have believed it.
So I struggle. I we go back to my testimony, and I was adamant I wasn't going to be a dad, but then the Lord changed my heart and left me with a kid a year after the book came out. But I call my testimony "Loving Oakland" because the idea of being a dad was the same as being a Raider fan, and if God can change my heart. Now I say that because in high school I spent the day with Gary Kubiak and did a story for my newspaper. And now his son's the Raiders coach. And I love the fact that Kirk Cousins is a wonderful Christian. So I would love to see a flash in the pan Raider championship and then go back to 30 years of not having a winning record. It's interesting, huh?
Wow. Yeah. Very interesting. And how old is your son?
Eva is my daughter. She's 13 now.
Oh, your daughter. Okay, 13.
Yeah, I'm trying to get her
Okay.
to help do some podcasting and some talking football history. We'll see if I
Right.
can get her to.
Yeah. Well, maybe as she gets a little older, she'll develop an interest.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Well, it was
well,
great having you on. A lot
I
of
appreciate it.
interesting facts, and
Yeah.
yeah, I hope a lot of people are going to look into your book. Just go on Amazon and type in that title, and you'll find it. Scott Perry,
Yep. Thanks, Mark. And
NFL since
Rico,
1970. Yep.
that's it. NFL since 1970, and Scott at NFLsince1970.com is how they reach me.
Right. Wonderful. All right, Scott, thank you for coming on, and God bless.
God bless. Great show, Mark. I appreciate you so much.